Hi, I'm Will Lewis, and we're back for Season 3, Episode 9 of The Art of Outsmarting with Keith Mitnik. Now, our last few episodes, we've talked about creating the language of the case and how we can apply that in opening and in closing argument. Today, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about painting a powerful picture through metaphors and specifically through drawing. This is a different strategy, but another element of Keith's toolbox that I'm looking forward to learning more about.
Personal injury cases hinge on the details. ABC Legal, America's most trusted process server, simplifies every aspect of service, so you can focus on winning your clients' cases. ABC Legal Empowered Process Servers deliver documents nationwide and make 12 million attempts annually, with real-time GPS-tracked updates and proof available online. ABC Legal's simple and transparent services make life easy for your team and help you keep costs under control. Your clients deserve consistent, reliable, and accountable service of process. Sign up for a free account today.
So Keith, welcome back.
I'm glad to be back.
So we've been talking a lot about the language that you use in conveying the truth to the jury. Today we're talking about mental pictures, and I guess not just mental pictures, but physical drawing of pictures and metaphors. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is an exciting new thing. I've probably been doing it about 2 years now, and I can't take credit for it. Mark Lanier is the big proponent of this, and so I decided I would try it. And it involves, you can create beautiful pre-existing diagrams and drawings. I think Mark would tell you, and I know from now having taken to it like a duck to water, drawing them out live's better. Unless it happens to be something that is really powerful, you really need, and it'll take too long to draw. Then you need it. But then I just would handwrite it out on a flip chart the night before and bring the flip chart in, or put it on a board and bring it in. I still want it sloppy. I don't want it perfect and pretty. Because I think part of it is not something came from graphic design that the jury knows you did and it's up on some beautiful PowerPoint. Part of it is the authenticity of live interaction of writing it out. And if it's a little sloppy, I think it adds more power to it because it's more real as opposed to canned. And here's the idea. The right word is metaphor. And I looked up metaphor because I'm thinking, well, isn't that an analogy? And I read 2 or 3 definitions. And I'm like, I can't tell the damn difference between an analogy and a metaphor. And I've been doing analogies for years. So what's the difference? And I finally figured it out after looking long and hard at it. An analogy is you use words to paint pictures. A metaphor is using imagery that conveys the point you want to make instantly. Kind of like old adages have authenticity. It's new to me. It's exciting to me. Mark Lanier turned me on to it, and I've now gotten so into it, I have to remind myself to give him credit for it, because he deserves credit for it, because he was the start of it. But I do it so much now I feel like it's mine, which is painting powerful pictures. It's called a metaphor. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me the difference between an analogy and a metaphor. I live and die by analogies. I wasn't doing metaphors because metaphors involve drawing. I can't hardly do a stick man. I'm stick manning all over the place now. And I'm having a blast. And I'm winning cases with them. So thank you, Mark, for pointing it out. The difference is, an analogy is something you use words to make a connection to something similar that people already have some understanding of. They go, oh, I may not understand what you're talking about, but I get it because it's like so-and-so. And it's word connections. Metaphors are using pictures that tie into a preset understanding. I draw you a picture of an olive branch and a dove. Everybody says peace. Now, that's too fancy for me. I couldn't draw that one. But I can draw a stick figure on an island by himself and show they're expert. And I may, if we have some time, do you one of my little drawings. Now, that little island actually was Lanier. When I heard about it from him, that's what it was. But I've added his island. And I've yet to use my island and not have jury laugh and me not if I wasn't so old, I'd do a backflip. It's so much fun. So we'll talk about that. So the power of using powerful pictures to communicate, because it's sticky, just like the words that have catchy phrases are sticky. Analogies have the history with a jury. Everyone heard them from the grandparents. They have authority and history and instantaneous recognition. Metaphors are the same thing. They're just a little more fun. So, and you do not, trust me, you do not have to be able to draw. So those are the ones. Educate, provide context, create the language of your case, and then painting powerful pictures, which is just my way of saying metaphors. You draw an image of something and people get it right away. But the pictures stick. We all know, it's you have to have show and tell. That's why we all have PowerPoints these days, and we have blow-ups, because it doesn't want to just be the lawyer talk. You need show and tell. And this fits into the show while you're telling. But it's this cool, fun, create this maybe sloppy looking diagram that everybody goes, ah. And there's a little charm to it. It's kind of fun. And I just think it's a wonderful communication tool that fits perfectly in this concept of, in our toolbook, creating the language of case. Because what you're doing is creating word pictures, pictures instead of just words to get a point across. And so I'll give you an example. I have said for years, sensible sequence of events in a car crash case. And I will cross-examine a doctor. And this was pre-metaphor picture days. I would get them up, and I'd have a blast and tear them up. The guy they hired, the spine doctor who they brought in, to say, sprain, strain, healed up. Everything after that is all the natural aging process. Or they're making it up. But it's no longer got anything to do with the crash. And that concept years ago came to me as ridiculous. And I labeled it sensible sequence of events, cross-examination. I'd do it in opening to preview it. I'd tear them up and cross on it, and then I'd do it in closing. And I'll give you the concept before I talk to you about how you, now I added the diagram to it, the writing, the little drawing to it. And I can just tell you, I didn't think it could get any better. It got better. And I'm having a blast doing it. I don't try a case anymore where I don't think about, is there a new one of these little drawings I can do? Because it's A, entertaining as hell to me, and B, I know what a powerful tool it is. But the sensible sequence of events started this way. You cross-examine a doctor. Say, doctor, let me see if I got this right. You're saying, you agree, you've looked at all these medical records, and my client hadn't had, up to the point of this crash, had no doctor visits for neck pain, or not in the last 5 years, whatever. I'm going to say none, but it can be any one of those. No neck pain in their entire life, documented. I'm not saying their neck never hurt, but never went to a doctor. Never got treatment for it. Never got an injection for it. Never went to a chiropractor for it. Certainly never saw a spine specialist for it. Never had any MRIs of it. Didn't have injections for it. And nobody's talking about surgery for it in their entire life. Have I got that right? Well, and from the records I could see, and I'd say, well, let's not, these are all the records everybody's gathered, sir. So of the records you have, there is zero. And this person's 40 years old. None. I got that right? And after some hee-hawing around, they go, yes. And then I say, and then they got in this crash. And according to you, this crash caused harm. You say it's just a little old sprain strain, just a boo-boo, but nonetheless hurt them, right? Sprain strain, I said, I just said that, sprain strain. Okay, yes. And then so none of this up to here, crash that hurt them according to you, sprain strain. And then you say 6 to 8 weeks out, the sprain strain healed. Yep. And then after it healed, they continued to have, and during that 6 to 8 weeks, they went to chiropractor, they had chiropractic treatment, they had physical therapy, and they got an MRI, and went to a spine specialist. Right? Yes. And you agree every single bit of that treatment, according to you, who was hired by them and paid a lot of money by them and worked for them all the time, according to you, all of that medical treatment was because of the injury that happened in this crash. Sprain, strain. I said, sir, I'm going to write it on the board. Sprain, strain. You don't have to say it every time. Yes. And so after no treatment in their entire life for this, no complaints, no doctor visits, boom, crash, injury, according to you. Treatment, 2 months. All for the injury sustained in this crash, according to you. Right? Yeah. And then you would have this jury believe my client woke up sometime 6 to 8 weeks later with the identical pain in the identical location. And now, even though the night they went to bed, it was all from the crash, they woke up in the morning with the same pain, same place. And now you say crash got zero to do with it. It's all just a big coincidence. I got that right? Now, they will not answer because they know they look like a fool, and now they think the wheels start coming off of it. And they'll say, well, it's natural aging. I said, hold on now. You told us, the jury on direct, that aging had been going on for at least 10 years, right? It had, or longer. I said, right. So, and up to the crash, all this, let's go back 10 years at least. Pain, you say, they're having natural aging. The exact thing they're having out here after this 6 to 8 weeks. Except they had absolutely no treatment of any kind here. Had all this treatment in the 6 to 8 weeks from the crash, injury, continued to have it going forward. And you're saying that the natural aging process, which was causing zero problem before the crash, and wasn't causing any problem for 6 to 8 weeks. When my client woke up that morning with pain in the exact place, that like a lightning bolt out of the blue sky came shooting down the natural aging and hit him right there in the neck. Boom. And they started having this same pain in the same place, and it just, the dangest thing, it hit them in the same place. Is that what you're telling this jury? It's ridiculous. That's sensible sequence. There's no way out of it. It's just stupid. Or they don't go natural aging. They say, healed up. Now you're making it up. That's even better. Except it never went away. Except you say they're making it all up. Either way, it's devastating. That's the sensible sequence of events. Now, let's add into it a diagram. One of the first ones I did was I created this little drawing, and I've got it here, and we're going to put it up. I'll have them put this up in a better form, but let me just show you. It's this simple. Now, I'm not going to sit here while you're here while I draw this. But I got a flip chart. I go take a big old marker, and I just draw a line with an arrow and a line, put the word crash. Look how sloppy that's how it looks live in front of the jury. You can't only read where I wrote crash. Then I do a little dot, 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 and then I put 6 to 8 weeks. Then I'm drawing this while I did everything I just did verbally that I've done for years. And you're writing it. And then you start saying, but now all this, you're saying this is aging, and then I write aging down here. Except then I take a little arrow and put aged here, 10 years back. I said, where's all the treatment? Where's all the treatment back here? Since this now you telling the juries the aging is causing the pain, where's all the treatment before the crash? What do you mean? I said, well, needed all this treatment since the crash, still going, and now it's aging. Is the aging like suddenly went from aging it needs treatment to aging doesn't need treatment, and it just happened to be right here? And you can go on for 10 minutes with it. There's no way out of it. And when you start doing the drawing, I promise you, when you start making these points and you start writing more up, and the more silly it gets, jurors are covering, they're going, it's a Saturday Night Live skit. It's stupid. It was so good before, and I started thinking, why is it so much better with the stupid drawing? It's because we're visual. And I'm doing this. So for this time and on this day and then for 6 weeks and then magically, when you see it graphed out, it has another element of just how asinine it is. That's the power of adding a little picture. Now, I had a diagram of this that I had created, and it was a thing of beauty, and I worked on it with 3 or 4 iterations with one of these graphic companies. I never use it anymore because I want to write on it and look like hell. It's part of the power of it. So that's an example of it. And now I'll give you the next, that is sensible sequence of events example. I'll give you another one. And this is one that I did take from Mark Lanier, which is he likes to take an expert when they're disagreeing with everyone else and draws a little stupid little island and a little palm tree and puts them on the island. And I loved it. But I was getting ready to do it, and I'm practicing my little island because I am a lousy drawer, and I want it to at least look like an island with a palm tree, even though it's not going to be pretty. And so I worked on it, and I had a couple of revelations. And we had 3 treating doctors, and we had hired our own orthopedic doctor to kind of act as a point person and bring it all together. So we had 3 treaters, but we had someone we hired too, just like the guy they hired. He agreed with all the treaters, but I couldn't make a big deal out of all the treaters versus hired because he was hired too. So I got thinking, how can I work I don't want to leave the hired guy out, but I can't put him in the same boat with the treaters because then I'm a hypocrite since I'm attacking him for all the money he's made. And this guy made a bunch of money for us. So I got thinking, I thought I can't put him in the same boat. And as soon as I said same boat, I went, I got it. This one's going to be a fun drawing. And this is how it ended up. You draw the little stupid island. I put we'll call him Dr. Jones, on the island. And I said, now this wouldn't have been here when we started the drawing. Just draw the little drawing and put your little stick figure. And here's Dr. Jones. He's out there on the island himself. And then I drew my little stupid boat. And I said, in all the treaters, I put my little stick figures. This wasn't here yet. I said, all my stick figures. I said, this is all the doctors. And they're going, he's out here on an island. They're going to shore. He's out here on his own on the island. I said, but there's one more doctor involved. And that's Dr. So-and-so that we hired. Now, in fairness, I keep talking about handpicked and hired as a lawsuit witness. Our guy's handpicked and hired as a lawsuit witness. None of these. But he does agree with them. So it's not just 3-1 treaters against this guy on an island. There's a 4th one who's traveling the same way. But I'm not going to put him in the boat. I put him in the dinghy. Because he doesn't deserve to be in the boat because we hired him to. But he is going the same way. I said, now, who paid for that island? The defense. For the last 20 years, they have been making installment payments for him on that island. You know why he's saying this kind of ridiculous stuff? He didn't want to get kicked off the island. And the jurors all laughed. You see the power of these little diagrams? They're fantastic.
The island, it makes such a big difference when you see it visually. And I think that's going to come across here in our podcast. I think that the audience is going to be able to see that. But it's one thing to talk about it and say, Dr. Jones is over there on an island and Dr. Thomas and Smith and so-and-so and Brown are, over here telling the truth. But now they're not, it makes it so much more memorable to the jury.
And entertaining.
And entertaining, yes, without question. And I think it's something where the trial's filled with anywhere from 3 to 20 days of testimony. But there's only a handful of pictures, handwritten pictures they're going to see, and I think that makes it memorable.
And don't be scared because you can't draw. I think it's got to look like what you want it to, but the fact it's rudimentary and looks like an elementary school, I think it adds charm.
Yeah, I would say charm to it. It makes.
Charm
I think it makes
to
it more authentic. It's not like you clearly, maybe you are. I'm not. By any means an artist. And
You see my sloppy
I think there's an authenticity.
And that's
to
after
that.
practicing. Dominoes. You ought to all own a set of dominoes. Go find some pretty dominoes. Don't get ugly, sorry ones. Get some good ones. And they make little ones. Get you the biggest dominoes you can find. And I had a medical malpractice case. And here was the problem I had in the case that I had to deal with that they were fighting for a big conclusion on. This was a guy who we say the doctor did not tell him about. It's called cauda equina syndrome. That's the horsehair at the bottom where the nerves are. If those things get hurt, impinged, people end up with incontinence, bowel and bladder, and in a wheelchair for life. It's horrible injuries, cauda equina injuries. And people that have intractable low back pain can get cauda equina. So they're supposed to be told by the doctor if you have cauda equina, if you have any problems, symptoms, such as trouble with urinary or bowel movements, and you have really bad back pain, you need to go to the emergency room right away because there's a very short window of opportunity. When it's done, you're done. Our whole case was over. My client says this doctor did not tell him, and he would have gone immediately to the emergency room had he told him to be on lookout. He had horrible back pain, and they were doing the surgery and clearance, and it was 2 weeks away. And there was no malpractice over waiting 2 weeks. But it was undisputed the standard of care was you need to tell him to be on the lookout. And why? So it didn't get blown off as no big deal. Doctor says he told him that. Patient says, you sure as hell didn't tell me that. And if you had, can you imagine I wouldn't have gone to the doctor or to the hospital. And the guy didn't write in his note. So, and there's some more to the story that's kind of interesting, but I'll leave that out. But so here was their best fact that could lead to the wrong conclusion. His primary care doctor, my guy says he called the surgeon's office and they said, he hasn't done your surgery yet. You need to talk to your primary care doctor. He called over to the primary care doctor and told him that he was having trouble with bowel movements and urinating. And they told him, you're on morphine, you're in a lot of pain, your surgery's only now a week away. Just hang in there. And then he called back again a day later, and they told him the same thing. There are no notes at the primary care doctor's office. It's his word against them. And they're having a hard time because they're co-defending. They're having a hard time taking if it's not written, it didn't happen because the so-called informant at the surgeon's office wasn't written, and they were saying it did happen. So they couldn't play that. If he'd have called them, they'd have written it card. And certainly not hard. But they found some old battle axe that was the office manager that had retired. And they got her to come in and I am convinced, make it up, but that's just my opinion. She testified, I remember him. And I told him he needed to get in an ambulance and go to the hospital, and he said he wasn't going to get in an ambulance, it was too expensive. So that was a big problem. And I wasn't in the case yet when that happened, and she was across the country and not coming, so all we had was her depot, and there wasn't a lot in the depot to work with. In fairness, it was sprung and didn't know. There was no time to prepare, a bunch of cross or anything. So we got that to deal with, and it's an issue. Now, we had a good little fact that helped us in that our guy, they didn't know this. They heard about it first time at trial. Our guy actually had joined some service, and you pay $400 a year, and he gets free ambulance as many times as he needs it. And he had his little certificate. So that sounded really stupid. So I felt pretty good about it. But this old battle axe, it was videotaped. She was, came off kind of like a mean grandma that might be telling the truth. And so I was worried about it. So I wanted to deal with it. And we dealt with it a whole lot. And we ended up with a big-ass verdict. We won with no comparative on our guy, none. But we had to deal with it. Back to this, using metaphors. Metaphors do not have to be drawings. This was dominoes. And so I wanted to do a thing about the domino effect. If the doctor had done his job, it wouldn't matter what would have happened over here, because we'd have never gotten to that place. He'd have been at the emergency room. And I thought, it's a hard sell that, look, you could tell someone, you know, you ought to go to the hospital if you got this or that. If someone tells you you're going to be pooping in a bag and peeing on yourself and in a wheelchair for life, if this happens and you have about 6 to 8 hours to do something about it, get to the emergency room, that's not something, all of a sudden I'm not pooping or peeing. You're probably going to go to the damn emergency room. So I thought they were pushing the envelope, but that lady said it. And if we were going to lose, the conclusion was going to be on that. So what I did in closing, I sent my trial partner out, great friend of mine, great lawyer at our firm. I've tried a lot of cases. He always works them up beautifully and tries them beautifully with me. He's one of my favorite people to try a case with. And I called him on Sunday. I said, I need some dominoes. He goes, I got all this and this. It was closing. I said, I need some damn dominoes. I said, it can't be that hard. He apparently spent all Sunday hunting for dominoes and finally found me some dominoes. So I didn't even have time to play with them because I was going to practice with them in the courtroom. He delivered them in the courtroom that morning, and about the time he hands me the dominoes, in walks the defense lawyer. I'm like, dang it, I don't want to receive with my dominoes. So I didn't even practice, and I thought this could go real bad with my damn dominoes. But, so I stacked the dominoes up. Now, I told you I couldn't draw. Look at the dominoes were all the same height and fatness. So forget how they look. And everyone agreed that it was the first day was the only opportunity to change the outcome. The die was totally cast. So I took the box of the dominoes. This is where I thought, oh, I'm going to knock my damn dominoes over. But I didn't. I put the box, and there was one domino right here. That's all the jury could see. I put the dominoes, and I put the box. I said, here's the problem with that lady. And I went through all why it didn't make sense, and she had told a couple inconsistencies, and she was the office manager for 25 years, and she's looking out for her old buddies and colleagues, and she's trying to be a hero, and da-da-da-da. I said, but let's just, if someone actually believes what she's selling, it doesn't matter even a little bit, because their own expert and the defendant admit, after day one, whatever happened wouldn't matter, not even a little. So this alleged phone call happened right there. And it's their burden of proof if they want to blame my client. They got to prove it. And they got to prove two things, just like we do: negligence and legal cause. They've been carrying on about what we got to prove. It is impossible for them to prove the legal cause part, even if you bought it happened. And then I picked the box up very damn carefully, and I said, but now we're back to some very basic principle. Now you know why that doesn't hold water. That's dead in the water if you're following the law. But if he just tells them, that day never happens. He's in the emergency room here, and we aren't here. But when someone doesn't do their job, dominoes fall. Boop. And now we need you to do what's right. And they did. And I'm telling you, I don't believe they believe that lady overall. I think we had some people on that jury, because they were out a while, who did. And I don't know, because no one talked to the juries, but I would bet a lot of money the reason we got zero comparative and got a big verdict was because my good jurors talked about the box over the dominoes and said, you're breaking the law if you put any on it. Because what proof would there be? What proof would there be it would have mattered? Who said it would have mattered? So, again, the power of these pictures, whether it be Legos, dominoes, whatever you can think of to bring in the courtroom to make your point, or drawing little stick figures, it can make the difference in a right conclusion or wrong conclusion, justice and an injustice.
So, we talked about the chart to show the sensible sequence of events. We talked about how you can use an expert and show that they're not only is their opinion on the island, but they're themselves on that visual island, and frankly, it's an expensive island. They paid a lot of money to be there. What other metaphors do you like to use?
Yeah, I have another one that I use in a lot of, I created it in a case against a biomechanical expert. I used it in a trial you and I tried down in Miami in a different way. And I've used it many times since then. And it fits so many scenarios. And here's where it's what I call the keystone. When you use the keystone, here's how it works. You need to have something that is a centerpiece of the defense, something that's critical to the defense. That you can destroy. And if you build it around the concept of a keystone that holds the whole defense and without it, it crumbles, and then name that keystone whatever it is that is so vulnerable to attack, then you can visually show the defense crumbling because no one's buying the keystone that holds it all together. And so it started in a biomechanical. And the story with the biomechanical is this. He was an MD biomechanical. Sprain, strain, sensible sequence events. He admitted sprain, strain, injured. Now keep in mind, he's saying this crash, and it was one of those with not a lot of visible property damage. He said, look at these pictures, and I've run the forces and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's the force equivalent to stepping off a curb or sitting in a chair or some nonsense, the activity of daily living. Which, by the way, you can use yourself as a metaphor and sit in a chair. Say, so you're saying, hit the back of that, bent the trailer hitch, and that's the same as me doing this. That's what you're telling this jury? And they're ruined. I do that in the opening. I said, all you need to know, I said, we're going to cross-examine. You're going to see why it's so wrong, but I don't have time here in opening. All I want to tell you is this. He's going to tell you this is a different case, but I showed a bent into U trailer hitch, got rammed from behind, tungsten steel. And he says that's the equivalent. Sitting in a chair. And you can see the jury saying, what? He was right. I said, he's coming, and I'm going to cross him, and I'll show why it's wrong. But that's the end of conclusion. So whatever added up to that conclusion isn't worth a hill of beans.
Yeah, and to just put a little bit of emphasis on that, I think one of the really, something I obviously picked up from you was getting ahead of experts during opening. I mean, I'll tell you, the biomechanical is a great example, but if you can get that jury thinking about the flaws in these expert opinions during opening statement, and not letting them, the first time they hear about the problems, be on not just the direct, but the cross of that expert, I think it makes a world of difference.
Huge difference. I mean, think about it. They're not bringing, I don't know, they brought some slobs in before that I'm surprised. But typically, they're going to pay them all that money and keep using them. It's because they have good credentials and they look good and they talk good and they're impressive. And you're sitting there watching them and watching the jury laugh at their little jokes and writing everything down, and you're pitting your stomach. You go, oh, they love them. And now think of the heroic task you have. He's climbed up on the top rung. You got to climb up, get his ankle, and try to yank him down without falling yourself. That's hard. So what if you don't ever let him get on the ladder? What if you show him he's a buffoon before he ever gets on the ladder? So when he walks in the courtroom, everybody goes, oh, this is that guy he was talking about. So why would you wait? It's a pre-cross.
And one of the things I've seen you do, which I've also taken, is put up a picture of that expert during your opening, so that they know who you're talking, so that the jury is going to associate that picture with this guy who's about to go feed him a load of nonsense.
And it's tempting to go get a picture that makes him look like shit. You want to have a picture that looks like what he's going to look like when he walks in the courtroom for that reason.
I feel like you can almost use it against him. They pick this fella or this woman
Handsome.
out because they present very well and they're a great talker and all of that. And you can almost play that up. But then they tell you that getting into a car crash with a multi-thousand-pound vehicle is the same thing as stepping off a curb.
Yep. And you say, listen, ooh, he looks good. Very beautiful suit, got this white hair, full head I'd kill for. And, oh my God, his credentials, wait till you hear him. Double boarded. Got board certification in 2 different areas. He's a doctor, MD doctor, and a doctor of engineering. And he's done work for the United States of America Army and NASA. And the jurors are like, why is he doing this? I said, well, let me tell you what he's going to say. Now the jurors go, when he does all his credentials, they're thinking, this is what this guy was telling me about this clown.
And they've already heard it.
They've already heard it from me.
Yeah, and it kind of sets the bar at a different place. And to me, that's something that I've unfortunately I've tried cases where I wasn't doing the opening or somebody else, and they didn't hit that in opening. And then, like you're saying, that pit in your stomach when the expert's up there and they just, and what they're saying is nonsense. But that, like you said, they're starting with a big lead. Why give them that lead?
And by the way, they're not going to give it up on cross easy, so it's not going to be a clean cross usually. So why not destroy them when they're not in the room? So you do it, and people say, well, that's argument. No, you say the facts are going to show. Here's what he's going to say. We took his statement. I know exactly. We got a report. I'm going to tell you what he's going to say.
I think nothing we said to argument.
Yeah.
He's literally going to come in here and say that this car crash between multiple heavy vehicles is the equivalent of stepping off a curb, of falling back onto a chair.
Yep. Let me add one thing on stepping off the curb. By the way, we're off on a different topic, but it's too good to skip. Even though it's ridiculous what he equates it to with the activities of daily living, let's talk about stepping off a curb. I can go outside and step off a curb 90 times in a row. I will not hurt myself. At my age, I may have a sore thigh the next day, but I'm not going to hurt myself. But let me be walking and talking and not paying attention, step off the exact curb unexpectedly. I'm liable to get hurt. There's a huge difference between an activity of daily living, which by definition is intentional, prepared for, designed for, meant to do it, and doing something that ambushes you weren't ready for.
I mean, that's a fundamental flaw with these biomechs altogether, is everything they're talking about is assuming that they know it's coming. It's a huge difference if I don't know something's coming versus if I do.
Night and day.
But everything we're talking about here, and this is something we mentioned, I think, in one of our initial episodes of the season, pre-act versus react. I think, this is straight from the Mitnik toolbox. To me, this is one of the classic examples of pre-acting, is putting up those experts and talking about them during opening. I think it makes a world of difference.
And you say he's going to be here, probably day 3, somewhere in there. And his name is, there's the picture, you'll know when he walks in. They're going to say, call your next witness, and we call Dr. Shalangi. That'll be the guy, kind of strange name. When he walks in, that's the guy I've been talking about. And it just, and then you throw in, and he's been paid X, and da-da-da-da. And you've ruined him, and he shows up. And I'm always shocked. I think they're going to be like this. They still will laugh at his jokes, but boy, is it easier to bring them down because I've prepared everybody. It's like, you eat a steak and it's tough, or you can marinate it and it's nice and juicy. I believe in marinating their ass before I chew them up. So anyway.
I interrupted you. We were talking about the keystone analogy, which I always think of as Jenga as well. But for those people who aren't familiar with the keystone, but the idea that you pull one piece out,
and it all comes. Jenga works too. I never played Jenga. I know what it is.
Because you don't have a 4-year-old.
I don't. But I do know keystones. This is where I first came up with the metaphor that was the keystone. This biomechanical guy took a position, MD biomechanical, that 2 things. He admitted it caused harm. That's a central part of this. He admitted it caused a sprain strain. He just says it didn't cause a herniation. And he used the pictures, because there wasn't a lot of visible property damage, to suggest it wouldn't hurt a flea. Out of one side of his mouth, but out of the other side of his mouth said it did hurt the flea. It just didn't hurt him bad, which I thought was a good starting point. But the fundamental keystone of his opinion that it didn't cause a herniation was not from medical records, not from MRI. He admitted there was a herniation and admitted the crash caused harm. He said, but the crash couldn't have caused the herniation. It had to have pre-existed. It was all aging. And the basis for it was that studies show you cannot herniate a disc if you do not break the back. The vertebrae has to be broken, the bones around it, and tear ligaments. And if you don't have both, you cannot physically herniate a disc. That was his opinion. By the way, I went and looked at the articles. One article was like 70 years old, something like that. And it was involved like 4 patients, and no one had ever cited it since. And it was just I don't know how it ever got to be peer reviewed. And then another one was by another biomechanical guy who probably testifies in court all the time. And it was a little more scientific and recent, but it is suspect. But other than that, there's nobody else on the planet. And including their spine surgeon who they had hired to come in and say it was just a sprain, strain, and heal.
Yeah, the radiologist will come in and tell you, oh, you get a herniation from picking up a golf ball out of a hole.
Now, this guy was a radiologist, so they didn't have an independent one, or I'd have done it with him. But I got their spine surgeon to say, now, you have seen herniations from crashes, yes. And they didn't necessarily have a broken back, no. So their own experts can't agree. But I had seen it coming, and I thought about it. And so in Bourdieu, I took a chance. And I asked all of our jurors, how many of you have you or a loved one ever been in a car crash and ended up with a herniated disc from the car crash? And we had 15 hands go up. And I didn't know what the answer was going to be, but I thought this will be fun. We'll see. Did your wife who had the herniation from the car crash, did she break her back? Huh? Did she break her back? No. Well, did she tear a bunch of ligaments? No. It was a herniation, no broken back, no. Next one, no. By the time I got to the 4th one, I didn't even need to ask. I'd say, herniation, it was me 3 years ago, no broken back, no ligaments torn. Every one, not a one of them. So when this guy comes, I took the flip chart out. And I first wrote that injured in the crash. And then I said, now the sole reason you say and I wrote herniation found on MRI. The sole reason that you say that was only a sprain strain and not a herniation from the crash is not because of these pictures. It's only because you say it's impossible to herniate a disc if you don't break the back and tear the ligaments. And he said yes. So then I brought out my drawing. I'll describe it and then I'll bring it out. Then I brought out then on the same, that was up in the corner. And then over here I drew my archway for the keystone. I said, so, and then I bring out to the side a big keystone so I can write in it. I put no broken back, no ligaments torn, no herniation. So that is the keystone. And I said, you know what a keystone is? And I went through all, and he said, yeah. Otherwise, you couldn't distinguish that herniation didn't come from it. After a little wrestling, he said, yeah. And I said, okay. I said, let me ask you something, just hypothetically. If I did an experiment and could somehow get about 30 people to come in this courtroom and sit in those benches back there, that's where they'd all been sitting. We had one of them sitting on our jury. I said, and get them all lined up in rows. And I went down and asked, how many of you had been in a car crash and ended up with herniation? I said, if what you're telling these people is true, 100% of them would have had broken backs and torn ligaments. Well, and he played some games. It would depend on, I said, sir, you're rewriting the question. The question is, every one of them would be yes. I said, and if not, let's say there were 17 of them. hypothetically. And not one of them had a broken back or torn ligaments. I think maybe you need to go back to the drawing board or get some new studies. Everybody on the jurors are all going. And I said, so. And then I had my diagram. I said, so if the jury rejects that premise, I X'd out as keystone, and then I showed all the stones crumbled, falling down. I said, you've just proved our case. Because in spite of these pictures the defense can't get enough of, you say it caused harm. And if we took that one keystone out, we got a herniation. So, now, there's the little keystone. See, it doesn't need to be pretty. Now, up here, I've shown some different examples because it fits other things. Then, after drawing it, and then I wrote over to the side one keystone that said no, 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 no. And then as I started going through the cross, I X'd this out, I X'd that, and then all my little sorry little arrows and my rubble. And over here was crash caused injury, and it also said herniation down here.
Proving to our viewers at home that you do not need to be a professional
Horrible.
Artist
But
to get the
made
point across.
Now,
Exactly.
take this same thing. This was down in our case down in Miami. This was not your typical, now it's aging, because we had a 20-something-year-old girl. So instead of that, what they said is, she healed up. She was better. So I put in the keystone, healed up, making it up. And by the way, you can vouch for this. She was very believable.
Yep.
Tough fall.
It's because she was hurt.
She was hurt.
She's believable because it's true.
And we had our hands full. It wasn't like it was a simple case. They had her, she was a scholarship soccer player. And after the injury, they got her the whole season playing soccer, heading the ball and running around like, things that would put me in the hospital. And then they had an endless number of TikTok dance doing these herky-jerky dance moves.
Being a 20-something-year-old girl.
Right. But not looking hurt. So they had that going for her. But she never said she couldn't do any of that stuff. And we said, nobody said she can't have fun. And nobody said she's not going to push to have her life, lead her life. But we had this biomechanical, we had the whole position of their not biomechanical, but their ortho or neuro, I don't remember which, spine doctor, was it healed up. And after that, there's no explanation for pain. So in closing, we did the same thing, except up in here, I wrote, healed up, making it up. And I didn't do it on cross-exam because he may have waffled on was she making it up. It was closing argument. And then we did so unless you believe she healed up or making it up, the entire defense crumbles. So I won't go on. I have used the keystone in multiple different kind of cases. And to repeat, if they've got an Achilles heel, that is a centerpiece of their case that you are confident the jury's not buying. That's one heck of a framing. And just draw the stupid little thing.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought those pictures out because for our audience to see that it doesn't have to be a masterwork to be very effective. And I've seen it in action, and I've seen it play out in the courtroom. And, it makes a difference, and it makes it more memorable to the jury for sure. So, Keith, thank you again, and look forward to the next episode.
Yes, sir.